Hi there everybody, and welcome to the first Vine training video. For those of you who haven't met me, my name is Gavin. I'm going to be teaching you the basics of cocktails, and we'll be moving on to some more advanced stuff a bit later on. So first of all, I'm going to assume that none of you know anything about bar equipment at all. I'm going to just talk you through all the pieces of equipment and the utensils that you'll be using while you're making and crafting cocktails at Vine. So straight away, let's move on. The Boston tin. This is one part of a two-piece shaker and the Boston glass. This is what we'll be mixing most of the cocktails in at Vine. So you've got your Boston tin and your Boston glass. You have your bar blade. Bar blade is a great bit of equipment for opening bottles. Very quick, easy to put in your back pocket or on your apron if you have one. You can just easily spin the blade round, take the top of the bottle off. I'll show you that in some flair moves later on. The muddler. Anyone familiar with the muddler? This is used for making the classic mojito, when you have to grind ingredients in the bottom of the glass before you either shake them or muddle them. This is to incorporate the ingredients before you actually shake them. Bar knife, serrated bar knife preferably, with two prongs on the end for picking up fruit. It's very handy, rather than using some tongs separately. Very good piece of equipment. A lighter, a long nose lighter, for when we're setting fire. There you go, it does work. For when you're setting fire to certain alcohol, which we'll be doing very rarely, but we'll go through that in more advanced techniques. The Hawthorne strainer. Now this goes, once you've shaked your tin, once you've shaked your drink in the Boston tin and the glass, this goes on top of the tin like so. Everybody can see that. It's held with your index finger just on there like so, so you can get some kind of torque on it, so you can control the amount of flow that comes through, just like that. Okay. Sometimes we need to double strain cocktails. So if you were just straining the cocktail, that would be classed as straining the cocktail with the Hawthorne strainer. If you want to fine strain, you would use something like this. It's a conical strainer. Or something like this, a bit more rounded. You can even double fine strain sometimes actually, because those two fit inside each other. And the occasions that you'd use that for, perhaps if you're making a cosmopolitan or an espresso martini, those are drinks that you want to look really clear, with a nice finish to them. You don't want any cloudiness, and what happens sometimes is when you shake a cocktail, you can have tiny little bits of ice in there, and if those little bits of ice do come through a Hawthorne strainer, because that's quite a large gap for it to come through, as you can see, that can discolour and make your drink look a little bit cloudy. So we're going to fine strain them to collect any bits of those tiny little bits. Next up is the bar spoon. The bar spoon has a long twisted stem, so it's very easy to manipulate between your thumb and middle finger and index finger, so you can just twist it like so, or you can move it around in the mixing glass very easily, like that. We'll talk more about mixing drinks later on when we get onto the toasted sesame seed sazerac. A vegetable peeler. I'm sure you're all familiar with one of these. If you're not, then you should be. Should help out your mum more often. And a zester and channel knife. Now a zester and channel knife, if you just take a closer look there, you can see that it's got a little cutout just here. That's for taking long strips of peel and zest off the fruit. And this particular one has 5 little slots in the top, and that has 5 little sharp bits connected to it. That's for tattooing the fruit. That is mentioned in your cocktail spec, and I'll show you how we're going to do that later. The jigger. This particular one is a Japanese style. It's called a Ginza jigger. Looks very pretty, as you can see. Very common. You can do a little bit of flair with it like so, or you can even free pour into it if you have to measure sometimes, and just tip it into the glass. Looks very nice. The measuring spoons. Now these are something that we won't be using very much at Vine, as there's a lot of free pouring going on, but as we get more advanced, perhaps specials that we'll do, and we're doing very fine drinks, then you will perhaps come across these. It's handy to know what they are anyway. And these particular measuring spoons, there's 4 of them. This one has a 15mm measure, which is equal to a tablespoon, a 5mm measure, which is equal to a teaspoon, and then you've got the 2.5 and the 1.25 mil. So I'd say we won't be using these very often, but it's handy for you to know what they are. And second to last, this is a julep strainer. Now we've already seen the Hawthorne strainer with the spring on it. and this is a little bit different. You would usually use this to make a cocktail called a julep, which we may do sometimes. And this simply goes in the glass like so, and just sits there like that. And you just hold it with your index finger, similar to the hawthorn, but rather than it moving on a spring, it just simply strains out through all those holes there. There you are. And last but not least, because we will be doing quite a lot of sours, is a milk frother. Funky purple one for you here. There you go. You may have seen these before. You put them in your milk. Good way to do a cappuccino at home. And you just simply press the button up and it spins round and helps to froth your milk up, get nice length on it. What we'll be using it for is for emulsifying egg white, because all the sours that we're doing use egg white. You get a really nice full body, and rather than doing something what's called dry shaking, which I will show you how to do because it's very important that you know all facets of cocktail making, this is a much quicker and easier way to emulsify. And what dry shaking is you would put all your ingredients including the egg white and shake them up really hard. Instead of putting ice in with them, you just put them in on their own and shake it up really hard so it gets a nice froth on it. This saves a lot of arm work and a lot of time by just simply putting this in, whiz around it for probably like 5 to 10 seconds. You'll see it start to froth up on its own, then you can put the ice in and do the full shake and strain it into your glass.